Today I was hoping to be continuing work on the Venus chronograph, but the parts order that I'd ordered didn't turn up as expected. So I've decided in the meantime, because obviously it's going to be after the weekend before they arrive, I'm just going to take a look at this little Raketa Russian watch, which I got in a lot of Russian watches a little while ago, and it was a bunch of them, and it appears that whoever had owned them previously, I think, had used them for practicing, and they all seem to have problems of one sort or another. And this one's just a little bit unusual because it's a 24-hour one, as you can see. It's got a revolving outer dial, which is turned by this lower crown, and those who are familiar with this kind of design, this is the same kind of layout as you would get with the perpetual calendar watches, and I'm assuming this is for a GMT type function. This watch is also missing a seconds hand, so I'll have to see if I can locate a suitable seconds hand. The movement looks relatively clean. It is a 2623H movement. They're a fairly simple movement, they're not too complicated. Much like the alarm watch, but without the added bits of the alarm that you might have seen in my previous videos. So I'm going to go ahead and uncase this. These are uncased like a pocket watch. The case securing screws unscrew, and then you have to pop the front bezel off and it drops out from the front, and then the actual ring with the outer ring remains in place unless you have to remove it for any reason. And that's usually only necessary if something's stuck or the teeth of this little wheel that you can see in the recess are damaged. Here you can see the case with the 24-hour ring, which is a brass ring which is printed, and this just lifts away like so, and that sits on the moulded in insert of the case. The only things that really go wrong with these are the teeth getting chewed up on them, and this tends to happen is if the ring sticks for any particular reason and force is used to try and turn the crown, and it tends to chew up the teeth on them. Same with the perpetual calendar, so exactly the same principle. What I neglected to mention, the fault with this one, it winds, it runs, it's got very lackluster performance, but the fault with this one is that the hand setting doesn't work. So I'm hoping that there's not going to be missing parts when I actually get the dial removed and we take a look inside it. You can see if the setting lever side of things is okay, that's working as it should, but you can see it's, although the intermediate wheel's turning, it's not moving anything. The minute wheel is turning, it's just not moving anything else. But in taking off the hour wheel, it's actually an incredibly simple problem, and it is quite simply that, let me focus this for you, whoever worked on this last just did not, pull that out so you can see what's happening, didn't seat the cannon pinion. I'm just going to go ahead with the disassembly right now, and I will probably, rather than do a blow by blow, I'll probably do a quick sort of feed through of that, because it's a fairly simple movement. I'll do a quick feed through of it. If anyone has any specific questions, then you feel free to ask in the comments. Note also that of the 3 screws that secure this barrel bridge, the click spring screw is slightly longer. And the one other thing I will do before refitting the balance cock and getting it all prepped for the cleaning machine is the escape wheel has capped jewels on the bridge and the main plates like that you can see here. These remove, they're quite fiddly, so I don't know if I'll be able to film that. I will need to get a pair of very fine tweezers and unhook these 2 hooks here to remove them, and I will be removing these to run them through the cleaner and then refit them and oil them with the automatic oiler, because that's just much easier than trying to oil a capped train jewel like the Seiko Diafix and such, and then fit it and keep it in place without the oil spreading where you don't want it. So it's actually quite heavily jeweled, all things considered. You've got the the main plate centre wheel jeweled, and the bridge as well, so it's quite nice. It looks like a really nice clean movement. There's a distinct lack of lubrication, so I suspect that that's rather than from the factory, I suspect that that's occurred because of the previous owner I bought these from. I think has probably used these to practice disassembly and reassembly, and he's maybe cleaned them and reassembled without any lubrication. But it does look very clean all the way through, so I'm quite pleased with that. It should hopefully run quite nicely. The main spring doesn't look bad, so I will try reusing that, and hopefully we'll have a nicely beating watch at the end of it. Now we're just about done with the reassembly. I need to polish the crystal, which unfortunately is cracked, as you can see. It's got a crack across there. Although the crystal did come out when I was cleaning the case, and it doesn't look like it's cracked all the way through because this didn't separate. So I'm going to polish out the scratches that are evident over the middle of the face, and I'll just kind of try to position that like that for the moment, and at some point I will pick up another crystal. As mentioned, I did find the seconds hand. It just appeared it was obviously somewhere inside the case, which was quite a nice thing to find. But the pipe for the seconds hand was still attached to the fourth wheel stem, which I removed, and I was going to attempt to restake back onto the seconds hand. And unfortunately, as I was moving the pipe in my tweezers to the pin vise to hold it in place while I placed the seconds hand, so that I could use a stake to rivet that in place, it disappeared into the ether, and I spent a good sort of half an hour or so searching for it with no joy at all. I don't know if it's magnetic. It might have been made of brass, in which case I've practically no hope of finding it, but I did sweep everywhere with the magnet. So at the moment what I'm going to do is try and find another seconds hand that will fit. Here, as you can see, is the completed watch. It has a white seconds hand, which is from an old Raketa, which has a damaged minute wheel, which has been sitting awaiting the possibility of a spare one coming up at some point. But I did end up using the case from that to put another Raketa movement in, which was a nicer dial with a day date. So that's probably just going to end up being a parts thing anyway. So I took the seconds hand off that, but not before I had tried to fit a Vostok one. Now, anyone who's worked on Vostok will know that the centre seconds pinion is very, very thin. Really thin, because it's an indirect drive centre seconds, a bit like the Miyota, but it's really thin like a needle. I tried to broach it out, and I tried a few times to fit it to the centre seconds pinion, and it was just having none of it. It just wasn't going to work. So I decided to go ahead and fit the white one that you see here. And then, been testing it on the time graph, I got some absolutely fantastic results, so I'm delighted with that. However, it is stopping randomly. I've just actually let the power down at the moment, and it's still going right now with the remnants of power. And I will get to the time graph results, but it is stopping randomly. So I let it run until it stopped, and then carefully opened the back and had a check. Couldn't see anything catching anywhere, and as soon as I gave the wheels a little prod, it was off again. The balance started beating, and away it went. So I did a quick check around, and then I noticed, in fact I'll scoot in close and show you this. There was a little bit of power in there that I'd not let down. So when I was having a look around, I noticed the jewel here seemed to be a little higher than here, and checking the end shake, and try and do this very carefully because I'm doing this from a height. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. Let me get down close so I can actually see what I'm doing rather than risk damage. And I don't know if that's how visible that is, but you can see it's got bucket loads of end shake. Hopefully that was visible. I had to get down close to the watch, so I don't know if that was videoed or not. But you can see it's got bucket loads of end shake, and I think what's happened is, while I've been trying to put the Vostok seconds hand on, I've inadvertently pushed out the jewel on here. So I've let down the power. What I'm going to have to do is remove this bridge, the train bridge, and with my jeweling tool just reseat this jewel here, and then refit it and double check the end shake again. And I think what's happening, because it was running it was stopping occasionally dial up, and I think what was happening, because it's so much end shake, the wheel is actually just contacting the plate, or possibly the ratchet wheel here or something, and that's what's been stopping it, I believe. I've used the jeweling tool to reseat that jewel, cleaned all that up and reseated it, and the end shake is now much better, as it should be. So far so good. It is still running at the moment with no evidence of it stopping intermittently like it was previously, so I think that was the case. I had actually just unseated that jewel a little bit, trying to fit the unsuitable seconds hand. I've set the lift angle to 47. Looking around, I did find somewhere that said the lift angle should be 42. I actually checked it myself. There is a way to do that, to check your lift angle manually, and if anyone's interested in that, I can try to do a little video on the how-to. Right, so I'm going to set the time grapher going, and the lift angle is set to 47. We're currently dialed down. And this is on a full wind. We've got an amplitude of just over 300 degrees. So a very, very healthy amplitude. I don't think this watch has had a lot of wear or use at all. It's incredibly clean inside. So dial down, we've got plus 9 seconds and just over 300 degrees amplitude. Dial up, I've got a slight drop in amplitude, but still incredibly healthy at 295. And we are at minus, that's actually a bit less than -6 just now, it's still evening out. But -6 for the sake of argument. Pendant right, and I've regulated this specifically for dial up, pendant right, pendant down, which are the 3 primary positions that I regulate my watches for. So we've got 305 degrees and -1, -2 seconds. Pendant down is giving us, that should be quite a similar reading. As you can see, we've got a bit of a drop in amplitude, quite a bit of a drop in amplitude there actually, compared to the others, but still quite a healthy reading. We've got -2 seconds, and just for the sake of completion, we'll try pendant up, which is one that I will test for anybody who's a right wrist wearer, if I'm servicing a watch for somebody who wears it on the right wrist. And you can see there we've got a fairly consistent reading, -3 seconds, and for absolute completion, pendant left. And with pendant left, we've got a little bit of a gain similar to what we had in dial down at +5 seconds. So all in all, very good results. I'm really happy with that. Can't complain about that at all. It's an interesting looking watch. It does need a new crystal. I will have to get a new crystal for it, because that is going to niggle at me. That crack across the bottom there, I say, although it doesn't go all the way through and the crystal popped out complete when I was cleaning it, I have given it a buff up, so you can hopefully see there that the scratches in the face, they're still evident because they're more like stress cracks rather than actual scratches. So it needs a new crystal at some point. I have actually just put an order in for some parts. In fact, the reason I ended up doing this today was because the parts order that I'd ordered for the Breitling haven't come in, which I was expecting on the Saturday, which was when I started filming this. So all in all, I'm quite pleased with this. It's a little bit different. 24-hour dial. It's the first watch I've ever had with a 24-hour dial, and it's a little bit different. I'm quite looking forward to wearing this one. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope it's useful to you. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.